Good evening or good afternoon, everyone, to our final talk of the American Studies Colloquium series for this semester. I am so happy that today we will listen to Jessica Roda, from Georgetown University, but as I've learned right now, she's currently in Montreal at the visiting professorship at McGill University. And her talk is entitled Cyberfeminism and Orthodox Version in North America, Social Media as a Counterpublic Transformative Space of Religiosity. And I have to say that I'm extremely excited to hear the talk, especially that, an analysis of social media from an anthropological perspective is definitely something that we don't get to observe often enough here at OSA. So without further ado, the floor is yours, Jessica. I would just ask everyone to keep their Zooms on mute and interact in the chat room and post questions or comments. And once Jessica finishes, we will open up for Q&A. We'll read out the comments, questions, and then answer any other lingering doubts or questions or follow-ups that you might have. So welcome, Jessica. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Marta, for the introduction. I would like also to thank specifically Carolina Krasuska, Professor Krasuska, who introduced me to the American Studies Colloquium, and I guess who made the link with Agnieszka. I also would like to thank Agnieszka Katwensinska. I'm sorry for my Polish, the way I pronounce the family name. It's difficult for me, but I try.
It went really well. Don't worry.
Okay,
Thank you.
I try my best. So before sharing my screen, prepare a PowerPoint for the presentation today, I would like to explain a little bit how I'm situating what I'm going to talk about today in relation to my brother research project. So I'm currently working with ultra-Orthodox and former ultra-Orthodox female artists in music and film, more specifically. But I'm writing a book about those artists, and this book tends to rethink Orthodox women, and more specifically ultra-Orthodox women. And I will tell you a little bit what I mean by ultra-Orthodox, even if in the title of my book, I use just the term orthodoxy. So to rethink Orthodox Judaism as a feminist, technological, and global spaces that also encourage us to reinterpret religious authority as well as artistic productions today. So the goal of my research is really to reintegrate and reshape the way we think about Orthodox Jewish women, and also to use them as an agent to help us rethink about artistic production in the liberal world, and also to rethink about religious authority. So the talk today is to give you the context of this chapter of my book, is that I started to work with artists in the community, artists who left. So if you watch the series Unorthodox, you might know what I'm talking about. So women who are not living anymore in the community and who became artists, who became actresses, or who became, singers or musicians. And on the other hand, I also started to work with women in the community, in the very private space. And while I was working with those two, I would say extreme, you can imagine one is completely part of the secular world, but still connected to the ultra-Orthodox world, and the other one is still inside. Both of those actors started to talk to me about professional artists who were still in the community and who were on social media. And this discovery was extremely new for me, because indeed I couldn't imagine. Well, first, I knew that the art was very, very important for the community, and more specifically music, but I didn't expect them to be on social media, because there is an important controversy about the use of social media for ultra-Orthodox Jewish women. So I'm going to start to share my screen, because I prepare a PowerPoint, and it's always much nicer. So can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So this is different women. So I decided to post the profile of certain of the women I'm working with, and that I'm following as well on social media. So those 4 women are Hasidic, which means that they belong to what we can say the ultra-Orthodox world. And within the ultra-Orthodox world, you have Hasidic, that you might be more familiar in Poland, because Poland was an important place for Hasidism. And you also have another group within ultra-Orthodoxy. It's called the Litvish or Yeshivish. In North America, we talk about the Yeshivish, Litvish community. So in my talk today, when I will mention ultra-Orthodoxy, I will refer to those women who either are married or belong to the Hasidic community or to the Litvish community. So this is important to give you an idea about who I'm talking and who are the women I'm referring to. So ultra-Orthodox artists and influencer I have met throughout my research, my ethnography, maintain accounts on social media as an integral part of their everyday life. They normalize their online presence as a common and accepted practices because it is for professional reasons, while they also engage in subversion, and you will see why their practice are part of a subversion. They promote their artistry as well as their social and political ideas through the platform. Their performances aim to entertain, educate, discuss, and debate various subjects, such as feminism, racism, beauty, orthodoxy, and they interact with followers, but also with other artists and influencers on social media. However, by being on social media, they also routinely disobey religious authority and leadership. They are contradicting norms established by the Jewish ultra-Orthodox press vis-a-vis the veiling of women's face. And while some religious leaders have positive attitudes towards the usage of technology for economic and business purposes, a majority have voiced their clear opposition to the use of social media. These leaders argue that technology is especially dangerous for women and constantly remind the next generation of its dangers. And if you're interested in the subject, there is the recent book Hidden Heretics by Ayala Feder, who really explain how the religious authority is discussing and trying to engage with social media and internet. In 1999, the Belzer Rebbe, who was an important leader among Hasidim, imposed an internet ban in Israel and was soon adopted by other ultra-Orthodox groups. While engaging in a war against the internet, ultra-Orthodox Jewish leaders progressively realized its economic potential and necessity for business. So like other religious groups, ultra-Orthodox Jewish leadership has a contradictory relationship with the internet. Social media blurs the lines between representation, participation, and reception of religiosity, providing religious groups the opportunity to define themselves and build decentralized communities around the world. While the new technology may provide a platform for proselytizing, it may also be seen as allowing problematic moral or secular content to invade the home. The online unveiling of ultra-Orthodox women faces and voices raises 2 central issues. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know why this rings. The first involved the multiple facets of the performance of modesty that we call tzniut through images and voices that are online. While the second issue is the function of social media as a counterpublic transformative space where women create new avenues for the performance of womanhood in orthodoxy and new avenues embracing cyberfeminism. So my talk today is organized into two main parts. First, I explain in greater details how internet underlines a field of paradoxes that structure ultra-orthodoxy. And in my second section, I feature the way Instagram acts as a counterpublic transformative space for cyberfeminism. And I even play with the word. I use the term cyberfeminism. So frum meaning Torah observant. So those women are calling themselves, labeling themselves frum, female artists. So I will investigate more specifically the case of Flatbush Girl on social media. So I work with several, and I'm looking at several women, but for this talk today, I decided to really focus on one case study, which is the case of Flatbush Girl. The conclusion suggests to rethink online interactions, not as complementary of in-person, but as independent, that should be considered as such, especially with the drastic changes of our world since the pandemic. So first, the section about the paradox, internet of paradoxes. So in 2012, there was an important event, a rally at the City Field that got, through this event, you had about 60,000 male Hasidic from the Litvish and the Hasidic world who engaged and started to ban and discuss and ban the internet. So their strategy was to concentrate on the education of future generations and women. So they decided to think about how we can fight against the internet. Women started to participate in several rallies where they were taught about their moral responsibility to protect their homes and children. I recall more specifically an evening in May 2018 in Montreal, when the Belzer Rebbe came for a special visit during Lag BaOmer, which is a Jewish important event. Many activities and meetings were organized between the Rebbe, the Rebbetzin, who is the wife of the Rebbe, and their followers. These included visits to school, businesses, synagogues, and special programming for women in the evening. The central theme of that night, those evening for women, was the internet, social media, and smartphones. Several women expressed their satisfaction with the event as it comforted them in their choice to not use a smartphone, access the internet at home, and abstain from social media. During my various discussions about the internet and social media with members of the community, social media networks were presented to me as dangerous or heretic spaces with uncontrollable waves of secular knowledge, ideas, words, sounds, and images. One notable concern is the potential to interact with individuals online that might lead someone to become an off the terrain, somebody who's going to leave the community, or a doubter. Although some ultra-Orthodox women have a strong desire to stay away from the internet and social media, others have access to it but feel uncomfortable about it. Women interpellate moral authority regarding the protection of their homes and children from accessing the dangerous and distracting internet at home. Ultra-Orthodox women have developed two main strategies to do so. They either avoid discussion about it altogether, or alternatively simply use it, ignoring the restriction on it while disengaging from discussions about this paradox of being ultra-Orthodox and using social media. And this is the case for dozens of ultra-Orthodox artists, as well as the thousands of ultra-Orthodox girls and women who follow them on Instagram, on YouTube, and notably since the pandemic. So another interesting paradox about the social media. So I told you about this event in Montreal, where the Belzer, when the Belzer Rebbe came in Montreal. So at the same time they were discussing the ban of the internet, there was this interesting video that started to circulate on WhatsApp and even on YouTube about the Rebbetzin singing creating what we call a tish, with other male. And I'm just going to share this video because it went pretty viral. So it just highlights again the paradox. So you might not be able to see, this is a pretty small video, but I started to receive it through different WhatsApp group, and it even went, you know, even the women who told me, yes, this is so good, I don't have access to internet, but suddenly we're discussing about the video. So there is an access, there's definitely an access, and there's an interesting discourse about it. So these women and girls are connected that I'm working with on a regular basis over social media. As the registration for schools required parents to certify about their access to internet via smartphone or from home, these women often buy another phone that won't be mentioned to the school's authority, or they evoke professional reasons to justify their social media presence. Female singers produce music videos made available privately or publicly on YouTube or Instagram, while other artists post about their new project and stimulate new ideas from female agency. They endorse new professional opportunities, concept of beauty, and open-minded views on marital relationships. Although some women do not want to be known internet users, dozens of female artists are connected at home with their smartphone, sometimes posting photo or video with their kids. By doing so, they resist religious leadership that has tasked them with the responsibility to prevent their children and family from accessing the internet. If their resistance is not voiced through words or rhetoric, it manifests itself in action. Paradoxically, however, through their online presence, ultra-Orthodox artists and influencers are not merely challenging religious norms, they also uphold religious observance. Instagram is an extension of the private ultra-Orthodox female artistic space, normalizing the online presence of ultra-Orthodox women. Social media has become a space where modesty has found a way to be expressed, empowered, fashioned, and marketed as a consumption and standardized product to other women and girls. Ultra-Orthodox women and girls do not often see their experiences and identity reflected in print and online magazines or books, and can heartlessly promote their businesses in broader Jewish circles. So Instagram became a privileged platform for these women in the quest for female role models who share the common need for community while respecting the law of modesty as they interpret it. So let's now dig into the case studies, and more specifically, the example of Flatbush Girl. So in 2017, Adina Flatbush, known as Flatbush Girl on social media, launched a bold online campaign with the hashtag "From Women Have Faces." And this is the hashtag. What kind of message are we sending our daughters and sons when they look through a magazine and there are no female faces to be seen? In the last 20 years, Jewish publications were faced with the dilemma. What is a modest woman? Instead of embracing this as a time to create Torah guidelines, editors got lazy. Rather than coming up with proper tzniut, so modest parameters, they decided to remove women entirely, and they rationalized, women are strong, they will be able to handle being omitted from the conversation. Adina Flatbush defines herself as a Litvish girl from Flatbush, so this is a neighborhood in Brooklyn, with a Hasidic influence. As her mother grew up in Borough Park, which is another neighborhood in Brooklyn, very Hasidic neighborhood. So her mother had a Satmar father. So she really is influenced by the Litvish world and the Hasidic world. And she grew up in Flatbush, which is an ultra-Orthodox, considered more modern Hasidic space. Her campaign online started with the above quote alongside a photograph of herself with two elderly women who are related. So this is the photo that was connected to the hashtag and to the campaign. So Adina looked to her grandmother Esther and Leah as teachers who passed on the secret information about Jewish femininity to the next generation. The hashtag From Women Have Faces went viral and responded to what she defines as the erasure of women from Orthodox Jewish press. This initiative stands in opposition to the norms of her upbringing established by the male and female ultra-Orthodox leadership, which view exposing women and girls to the public as against the core value of modesty, and in turn discourage the publication of women's and girls' photos in magazines geared toward all genders. For Jewish ultra-Orthodox publications, including images of girls and women's faces would violate this principle. As a strong opponent of this interpretation of modesty, Adina Sash mobilized social media to alter this norm, suggesting it is a male's responsibility to distance himself if he feels uncomfortable looking at a woman. To defy this strict interpretation of modesty, she resorted to religious rhetoric. She references Jewish texts and ideas, mentioning, for instance, that being Jewish and a Jewish woman is bearing the responsibility to repair the world, tikkun olam, in order to secure legacies for the next generation. Her campaign led to many internal debates regarding the difference between the definition of private and public spaces in relation with modesty, with some people reaffirming the need to maintain the stricter rules of orthodoxy, while others created From Women Have Faces website combating this interpretation. As a public advocate for women's girls' rights and changes, and this is how she presented herself, Adina Sash has received much support as it has criticism. She uses her public Instagram and YouTube account to openly challenge authority, criticize Orthodox Judaism, and more specifically, women's role, issues, and stringent calls of modesty. She uses social media to discuss taboos, subject as arranged marriage, birth control, laws of family purity, domestic violence, sexual education, and attitudes towards the LGBT community and people living the community. She first appears on YouTube on December 25, 2015, and 6 months later on Instagram. In both social media platforms, she has a public account and started posting comic video with a satirical, ditzy, and slightly sardonic tone about women in Orthodoxy. In one of the first satirical YouTube video posts on January 18, 2017, she highlights the judgment about various forms of expression of modesty within the Hasidic Yiddish world, acting with Ricky Rose, a satire singer and actress who recently dissociated herself from the ultra-Orthodox lifestyle. And I'm going to show you the video now. So this satirical video.
كمان هذا الغدان أنا بهيس بدوران يبقى خدين بدو kennst mich vorstellen, dass es sehr los. Der ganze Gift steckt sich da raus. Ich weiß nicht, wie es so gut ist. Weiß ich. Ich verstehe nicht, was du lässt das ziehen. Man sieht schon nicht Pritzes in Gas. Wir können uns aber so rauskommen, weil er etwas will.
I'm sure that you gave and see feel change.
So in this short video, so there is an interesting dialogue between the Hasidic Yiddish, very modest women embraced by Ricky Rose, who's speaking in Yiddish, talking about this other woman coming, who she really distances herself because she thinks that she doesn't speak Yiddish, she's coming from another world. And at the end, there is this moment where Adina Flatbush Girl is responding in Yiddish, and this is the moment where there's a certain clash because she realized that in a certain way they are part, or they are connected. So this is an interesting moment. On Instagram, her first appearance is made via a video with herself as a mother, a wife, a daughter, and entrepreneur, asking her followers, which roles do you identify the most? In 2018, when she started to run for district leader in the 45th New York State Assembly District, she progressively moved toward an activist tone, and her posts substantially became more explicit about her criticism and desire to challenge religious authority. So this is something else. She's an influencer, she's a writer, but she also wanted to invest in politics. So as she stated in a video posted on November 18, 2018 on Instagram, there is no board of rabbis who need to approve a post on Instagram before it goes up. This space of social media is really leading to an explosion of females taking back their voices. In May 2018, she was interviewed on Brick TV, which is a Brooklyn-based nonprofit community TV, to talk about her journey from her master's in literature to the creation of her social media company, Flatbush Media. Her social media persona was built to increase her clientele at Flatbush Media, but she received many criticism, essentially from female from Orthodox circles who wanted to stop her social media activity as they see it as a threat towards the system. So she explained in a video what is her goal, and I wanted to show you a part of this video from Brick TV.
As extreme as they believe it is. My goal is not to shatter the system. My goal is not to have people like, you know, just say like laissez-faire, we're not doing any of this. I think that there is a very important role in tradition, in the family unit, and in you know, in the culture, in our tribe. I think those things are beautiful. It's just where it limits girls from really reaching their potential and understanding their power as females rather than their weaknesses as females.
Do you find...
So this is where she explained through this video, and as I said in the beginning, in opposition to individual or artists who like the community, she's not trying to, as she said, shut down the system. Her goal is to push the boundaries, and while she tries to push the boundaries, she's still reinforcing certain norms. She's still orthodox in the way she dressed. She still cover her hair. You might not see, but she has what we call a fall. So she also embraced this orthodox fashion, modern women. A few weeks after her TV interview, the one that you just saw, she posted with the transgender OTD activist here, Abby Stein, and challenged her followers with this post. Ask yourselves what is so scary about having open dialogue with the LGBTQ and OTD communities. So here was this post. She's also engaging with another taboo subject, you know, sexuality and people living the community. So she's trying to engage with this other subject. Even if she's trying to push the boundary, she mentioned throughout her entire Instagram account, you can see that she was struggling regarding her activity, and there was a cost to unveil females' life issues and taboos on social media. So part of this, the backlash that she received, and I'm gonna share another screen. So can you see this video? Okay. So there's another video that she posted on also November 19, 2018, where she talks about the impact and the backlash that she received, and I wanted to share it with you.
Keep it simple, like me.
My name is Rabbi Stein. and don't even think about getting a second earring hole or nose ring.
We're seeing a lot of females who are using social media to kind of break out of the shackles of the patriarchy. It's about creating a safe space for girls and women to assess their lives and deconstruct it. There's a lot of pressure within the Orthodox female community to always like look your best. I've been slut shamed for the length of my wig. I've been slut shamed for having a loud voice and trying to talk about women's issues. I've been told that it's just purely about being an attention whore.
Keep this. So another interesting event happened in 2018 when she decided to organize with two other women who actually are still inside the community, but really at the margin and considered of the derech, they are considered leaving the community. So they organized this event that was supposed to be, held in a restaurant, hosted more specifically at a restaurant called Garden and Eat in Flatbush. But the event was canceled over a rabbi threat to revoke his kosher certification because they were hosting Leah Foster, who was recognized as a lesbian. And then they tried another restaurant, Orchidea, who also had to cancel for the same reason. Flatbush Girl stood up for the side of Leah Foster and posted a video on December 10, announcing the displacement of the event to a bigger location in the center of Brooklyn. A video that had almost 40,000 views and a story that received attention from mainstream media who wanted to cover the scandalous event. 4 days after this video, Flatbush Girl posted a statement by the rabbinical authority stipulating that discrimination according to sexual orientation should not happen. So in a way, she received a lot of backlash with this event, and more specifically Leah Foster. But on the other hand, even if they receive a backlash, religious authority wrote a statement that discrimination according to sexual orientation should not happen. This is very, very big for religious authority to make such a statement. Adina Sash is one of the rare Orthodox women from a mixed Hasidic and Yeshivish background who defines herself as an Orthodox feminist. A lot of other women don't label themselves as feminist. Although she treats her action in the framework of transforming ultra-Orthodoxy from within to empower young girls to be aware about their potentiality, she drastically moved away from the ultra-Orthodox religious authority about women's role, public position, and representation. Several Hasidic and Yeshivic schools for girls are now worried about the impact that Flatbush Girl might have on girls. Trying to prevent them from social media access seems not to be enough. They now need to address and respond to the phenomenon of the women who are coming from the system and becoming female influencers and artists. Features in New York Daily, Jewish Chronicle, The Forward, a lot of presses and more than 50,000 followers on Instagram. Adina Sash is known as a celebrity inside and outside ultra-Orthodox circles, as a controversial figure who pushed the boundaries of the tradition established by the religious authority by uncovering the secret life of female ultra-Orthodox women and girls on social media. On the one hand, the action of unveiling for public conception are acts of disobedience to challenge authority, one that many eyes across the web will glance at and perhaps use to form an opinion about women's status in Orthodoxy. But on the other hand, questions might remain about the limitation, the efficacy, and the impact of this social media campaign on the religious systems itself. Are women being encouraged to challenge stringent norms of modesty using a particular emancipatory language, be it feminist, liberal, Jewish, or human rights, in order to compel fundamental changes in dress code? Even if many women and girls think her advocacy does not serve the proper need for women, her public action on social media encourages other women to invest in a leadership role for education in ultra-Orthodox circles. Even if Flatbush Girl is perceived as a controversial figure, she takes a conciliatory role, and this is important to note. She's not criticizing or expressing any hostility to tradition, but criticize the social roles that has been established on the basis of tradition. Her approach to women's issues uses the language of inclusion, representation, and freedom borrowed from the discourses of liberal universal feminism, while distancing herself from it by valuing the beauty and importance of tradition. Flatbush Girl represents a complex challenge to feminists who advocate for decolonizing universal feminism, such as the philosopher Kader. She is one of these other women who live in a global world, who have developed a reflexive relationship to their own communities, as much due to the development of online publics as a relationship to liberal feminism. From female artists like Flatbush Girl, or from female writers and influencers who operate on social media, bypass the restriction of their community to promote their work and disseminate ideas which contest or criticize the religious standard of their communities. Social media allows from female women to act with less surveillance and interference than the religious public spaces, and to rely on online and transnational networks to discuss feminist causes, transmit and express a variety of discourses and practices without necessarily labeling it as feminist, even if Flatbush Girl does, but many other women don't label themselves as feminists, and we'll talk about women's empowerment, will not also necessarily be online on a public Instagram account, will be more private. So you have different expression of this cyberfeminism, but I thought presenting the case of Flatbush Girls really express and highlights a figure that really tried to push the boundaries and express it also very vocally. So to conclude, Adina Flash's online presence and negotiation between promoting visibility to a broader audience and respecting the stringent norms of modesty captures the marginal, also growing phenomenon of ultra-Orthodox women producing social media as influencers and artists. Similar to the growth of social media presence and online initiatives addressing Muslim female agency and cyberfeminism, ultra-Orthodox women use Instagram and other social media for professional, educational, spiritual, and social reasons, inherently defying ultra-Orthodox authority that prevents for the use of social media for non-business purposes. On a broader scale, these tensions serve as an example to reveal new practices and discourses of authority and autonomy in our everyday digital lives. By displaying their uncovered faces and making their voices as artists, singers, and influencers heard on social media, the online presence of ultra-Orthodox women becomes controversial. Indeed, even if they normalize their online presence by justifying it for economic and business purposes, as Adina Flatbush did at the beginning. You remember at the beginning, she did it for her business to increase her clientele for Flatbush Media. But then progressively, she started to use social media for other reasons, for social, political, and feminist causes. So on one hand, they are justifying the use of social media for economic and business purposes, but then they are also engaging with subjects that transcend their businesses, producing alternative standards of modesty from the ultra-Jewish authority. As ultra-Orthodox leaderships implement strict restrictions on the appearance of women and girls, as well as the access to women's voice, ultra-Orthodox influencers and artists and their followers on Instagram and other social media paved the way towards distinctive understanding of orthodoxy and religious authority at the light of the digital era. This phenomenon underlies a new phase in the crisis of authority brought by the digital era in a religious setting, that Ayala Feder presented. So in her recent book, she talked about the crisis of authority with internet and the development of what she called double lifer. But with this phenomenon of women being on social media and trying to challenge, this is indeed a new phase of this crisis of leadership. A new phase laid by an ongoing redefinition of cultural norms within Jewish orthodoxy. Flatbush Girl and all her counterparts are diversifying the ultra-Orthodox Jewish landscape that might prompt the leadership to reposition itself and its discourses on the use of technology, internet, and social media for women and girls. Even though female artists and influencers are defying religious norms online, they do not destabilize hierarchies of gender in religious spaces, something that will then break away from the acceptable. As an example of this information, of this transformation, the organization Pinimi, and here this is a website, and I'm going to show you a video of this organization. So this organization was created in 2013 and works with schools, educators, and individuals to, and I quote, develop non-judgmental curricula for practical support to navigate technology and contemporary culture while remaining steadfast to religious values. So I just wanted to show you the website of the organization. There's an interesting video. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Don't worry.
Okay, so here is an interesting video. So as I said, on one hand, there is a strong, that's why I talk about the paradoxes. There is a strong opposition and desire to prevent, especially children, but even women and also men, to access social media. But on the other hand, they realize that there is a need to change also the discourse. The ban is not enough for, especially for a certain group of people within the community. So they really need to engage with technology in a different way. And this organization that serves, actually, you can see here, 55,000 students, 300 schools within 11 countries, really work with other, especially for schools and for women, to think about the use of technology in a different way. So I just wanted to show you the video of the organization. So here it's very important. So introducing Panini, a revolutionary life-changing Chinuch initiation. So which means that it's Torah oriented. So to really use technology, respecting the commandments and really doing it in a halachic way, which means in response or following the religious guidelines, the Jewish law, that provides students with in-depth knowledge and intrinsic understanding of contemporary realities, enabling them to make Torah true choices. So this is an interesting example of, go back to the PowerPoint. So this is an interesting example of an organization who, was developed in 2013, but they were not as popular as today. So this is an organization that is extremely well known, and of course serve eventually the more modern ultra-Orthodox spaces. This is not happening in the more conservative schools. They are not discussing the integration of internet for kids, but that might be also part of a discussion, and it is part of an important discussion how they're gonna address the issue for the future. So in other words, even though the social mediatic life exists as a single entity, its impact on the private offline events created by and for women and girls only seems to occur. So this is the example with Pinimi. If specialists of digital religious practice argued for a joint analysis of online and offline religious spheres, envisaging both spaces as a continuum, from female artists on social media encourage us to rethink this continuum. So you saw that in the case of Flatbush Girl, it's really a life that is happening on social media. So there is not necessarily a direct impact of her action within the system. It's not because she interacts outside of social media that Pinimi started to emerge. So this is much more about thinking social media, and more specifically a life, virtual life, as a life as itself. So analyzing what is happening on social media and thinking about it as a community, not necessarily in continuum or in continuity with offline religious activity. And this is something that is really interesting with those women, this online activities, because what is happening on Instagram is something, and I had the experience to do the online ethnography and also interacting with those women on site. So my ethnography is online and on site, and this is completely two different words. And the reality on social media is something, and actually the opportunities that they have on social media, even since the pandemic, the growth of online concerts, of talent show, Zoom discussions that is happening on social media is something that is growing, but it doesn't mean that in schools this is happening. This is definitely not happening. They don't teach on Zoom. During the first wave in the United States, for instance, the teaching was over the phone for the majority of ultra-Orthodox girls, except Chabad. So Chabad, I'm not talking here about Chabad. This is a different ultra-Orthodox Hasidic community because they completely embrace technology. But even if all the women that I'm working with online, they had a lot of activities, but a lot of the kids were not online. They were over the phone, teaching and not teaching, but learning at school. So two different reality. So the question about the impact of this from female artists and influencer on their community remains. To examine the influence of this online normalization of the from female artists and influencer, it is imperative to look at their interactions with their offline religious environment. If Instagram allows for their normalization as well as the transformation of their personal lives, choices, and self-perception, can we envisage a form of legitimation of their practices that would be transformative, not only on the counterpublic space online, but in the private offline one? Legitimation has to transcend social media, enter the private spaces where artists are able to pursue their aim beyond their community, their online community, and be legitimate by the mainstream religious authorities. For some from female artists and influencers who I encountered throughout several years of research, remains derives essentially from their online lives. If they might not be invited into certain camps or schools because they now appear as too modern, no matter, their productions, visions, and values still infiltrate these spaces via informal settings and interactions. From female artists are not yet changing the system, but they are participating in a diversification of the ultra-Orthodox Jewish landscape by creating communities that women who are like-minded can join online. Thank you very much. And now I have the time for questions. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I think this you've offered us a insight into a world that I'm not sure a lot of us is familiar with. And as you were speaking about this kind of disconnect between the kind of women's online presence and the realities of the home and the kind of access, I was thinking of the ways in which, in general, kind of those the spaces such as Instagram are very kind of carefully curated, kind of present the best self, or if they do not present the best self, it is also kind of a choice rather than kind of some kind of a lapse. So I'm wondering, if you've looked at this aspect, of those like curated online presence of these artists and content creators, and the way in which, it's not just that it's disconnected from the lives of the women whose lives they want to affect, but also in general, kind of how they live their lives.
So you want me to pursue the discussion of the impact of this online on the off?
Yeah.
So this is very interesting, because what I've been, the case of Flatbush. So Flatbush Media, this is a very different case, because she's known as controversial, and I really wanted to initially I thought about presenting 4 cases, and then I said, okay, I can't. So I decided to really present her case, because I think what is also interesting is that a lot of other artists that I know are following also her and liking her post, commenting on what she's doing, and also sometimes interacting with her on social media. I really see it as a kind of 2 realities, because on one hand, some artists who are on social media will say that they are on social media to their community of other women who are on social media, or other girls who are not, who do not see it as controversial. But on the other hand, a lot of other women that I know, they really, when they go to summer camps or school, sometimes to teach, or even they have private teaching, they really do not advocate their online practices. And as I said at the beginning, there's this moment where when I ask about internet access, this is always pretty, a place where some of them are not comfortable, not the more public one on social media, but even there is this filmmaker that is amazing. She doesn't have a smartphone. She now has a social media, but she doesn't control it. And I remember that when I asked her about how she accessed the internet, she really didn't want to engage with the discussion. And then it's after asking and asking that she told me, yes, I have a bedroom. I have a room where I have an internet. Just in this room, there is this internet. I say how, and I connect to the cable. But it took a while for her to accept that she had internet. And as I told you at the beginning of the talk, also the women, when the Belzer Rebbe came, there was a lot of discourse about not having internet. So when they are on Instagram, and I ask also, so how do you do with the school? So this is always a very complicated space, because they need to recognize that they have it with other people that also have it and do not see it as necessarily controversial. So that's why I'm saying that there are some connection with important connection and the impact that they might have on the community itself, on the authority, but they're really creating this alternative space online, and then they meet also offline to organize events, but this is from the same people that are also online. So that's why at the end of my talk, I really argue that if we want to, yes, they have the impact when they go to schools, when they go to summer camps that they teach, not in the case of Flatbush Girl, but other artists. They of course, they are bringing something different and they are interacting, but this is a different reality than what they are doing and what they are creating online. So through this space of online activities that might then exist offline, but outside the religious normative space, but this is really happening, and it's the starting point is online. So we really need to think about it as a unique space that diversifying the ultra-Orthodox space, not trying to push or to they're trying to challenge the authority, but they won't necessarily do it. So they will add another layers within this normative space, and other possibilities for those people who are, you know, at the margin, or who do not necessarily want to, you know, who want to have access to internet, who want to have a different, you know, cultural consumption. So I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. This is definitely kind of this makes, you know, this makes one think of kind of the deployment of media in various religious contexts. And kind of Karolina Krasuska asks the following question in the chat, kind of linking this to not just the Jewish world, but kind of also broader. She asks, is there any direct interaction between frum feminists and mainstream secular feminists and religious feminists of other denominations?
That's a very good question. So in the case of, I'm gonna, do I have it here? Yeah, but you can, I'm gonna share my screen to show you who I'm talking about. So on the left, Hani Rosengarten, she's a writer. She writes novel. She initially wrote novel, and now she's writing more you know, spiritual, you know, empowerment. It's more psychological. I would put it in that category. So interestingly, she's the rare person that I've met that interact with other feminist, religious feminists, and more specifically, she wrote a chapter for a book that integrates other religious feminists. So a lot of evangelists and Afro-American feminist writer. So she's the rare person who does it. And in terms of the interaction with other feminists, I would say secular feminists, Flatbush Girl is the one, and you can see in her narrative, she's also using, she uses the term feminism, while Hani Rosengarten uses the term female empowerment, and other women will also use female power, but not necessarily feminism. So for now, she's the only one that I've seen interacting with other feminists, and more specifically religious feminists. But this is, for instance, for music, this is a question that I have for some of the singers that I'm working with, because it would be another market, especially if they sing in English. You know, if they sing, when they sing in Hebrew or in Yiddish, it's much more limited. But if they sing in Yiddish, I mean, in English, sorry, it could be much more accessible to evangelists, for instance, or Christian or Muslim. But for now, this is not really happening.
Thank you. And we have another question from Piotr Błaszczyk. First of all, he says, side note, I really like the presentation. And then he asks, do you know other social media platforms apart from Instagram where Orthodox Jewish women also voice their views?
Yeah, so there is a Facebook. There is this group. It's called Kolisha. I forgot exactly the title. So this is women, and here you have centrist Orthodox. So you have a kind of a mix of women. So this is another space that has a lot of interaction. But it's really interesting because Facebook was and is still very, very controversial. So I remember that when we did talk about social media, it's like Facebook is the worst. So Facebook is the worst because this is the place where you can meet people and interact, and you have those groups, and it seems as the kind of the very erratic space. While Instagram and Twitter, more specifically Instagram, has been, this is the business oriented. So that's why I said that at the beginning. They say that this is for business. So the same thing with Flatbush Girl. She started with, this is for her business, Flatbush Media, and she's working with media. So there is no problem to use it for business. The problem is that when you started to have your face, your voices. So if you have your face just to promote your product, it could be okay. But then if you started to engage with other topic, and then you have your face and you create another kind of content, so this is not anymore business. But they will always have this idea that this is for business. So Facebook is another, and it's I would say an older generation as well. And they are not on Twitter. Interestingly, they are really not on Twitter. This is not something that I've observed. And TikTok started. So Leah Foster, but she left the community. I mean, she's not considered inside anymore because of her sexual orientation. She was, she exited the community. She's a lot on TikTok. So you have some who are trying the TikTok. Yesterday I saw Dobby Bomb, who was a singer, who also posted with no voice, but just the background of her first album in TikTok. So I think they are trying to invest TikTok, but this is much more, I've seen much more modern Orthodox, Chabad, the community who is much more connected to social media. And here, so Chabad, I'm not working with Chabad, Lubavitcher, even if you have within this community of from female artists and influencers, they sometimes interact with Chabad, but this is a different reality because Chabad doesn't have any issue with internet. This is the opposite. You just embrace, you consume. They don't have the same restrictions than the other. So yeah, I think for now this is you also have some websites and blogs, of course. Yeah.
Thank you. By the way, just a reminder, if anyone would like to ask a question, please, type it into the chat or let me know, and then just indicate that you want to speak, and I'll hand over the imaginary mic. And I was thinking in terms of kind of the religious uses of technology, maybe not so much social media, but I remember an anecdote from the JCC in Warsaw, so Jewish Community Center in Warsaw, where one of the kind of first adopters of Zoom technology before the pandemic that they had at the center was a Zoom Torah study with super ultra Orthodox rabbis, I think from Israel, not from the States. But it was, it's funny that, like in the same way as Instagram and social media can function as ways to reinforce some kind of pushback and this counter audience that you mentioned, but also obviously can very much kind of allow the continuation of kind of some forms of very strict Judaism, and I thought that was an interesting kind of anecdote. And kind of, I know you talk about women on social media and how they push back, and now I'll ask you, obviously, how about the presence of men on social media? And like, is there some kind of and I'm sorry, I know this is not what your study, but for context, what is the presence of kind of Orthodox men on these social media? I assume that more is allowed just on the basis of what you said, but then again, you said that men are not encouraged to use social media as well. So how does that work?
So as long as this is always this idea, as long as this is for business, this is fine. And this should be for business. But there is always the control of, okay, if you have a smartphone, if you have internet at home, what is it for? And how do you use it? You always have to justify if you don't have a filter, et cetera, et cetera. So the artists that I'm following, they sometimes also have some male followers, other artists, or they are following male artists. So it's for instance, singers. So a lot of the singers that I'm following, and you also have some women who have completely open accounts. So Instagram is not. So you have some male artists, but this is I didn't see it as a in her book, Ayala Feder talks about the Counterpublic space through the blog of heretics. I didn't see that among male on Instagram. Not at all. This is much more, a promotional platform. Well, for women, this is a promotional platform, but just by the fact that they also have their voice. So I didn't talk about Kolisha, which is another important part of modesty. You're not supposed to sing publicly. And even if you have a private account, there's a lot of different strategies that women developed in order to say, no, it's fine. I have my voice, but I keep it private. But then if you go on another, she has another profile where you can click on it and then you can access the YouTube link. So there's a lot of different strategies. But men, they don't have this need. And if they want to push the boundaries, this is much more, I've seen, on WhatsApp, on the website. I think there's on Twitter, you have some politics, and this is much more a male space. But for Instagram, they interact, women and men. Sometimes I've seen actually this week a group of singers share the new content of a male singers, and because they are usually listening to what is happening, they really want. So for the singers, the what I call the professional from female artists and singers, they really want to provide to the girls and women the same quality than the men have, and this is their main argument. They also want to have equality in terms of income. When they have a performance, they say, why a male should be paid $2,000 and I should be paid $400? Even if I only, so the other argument is that, yeah, but you have a smaller audience. But they say, yes, but the work is exactly the same. And we really need to have the same quality. We need to show that, this is not only male, we also can do that, and we can do that respecting the Torah. So there is a constant, they are situating themselves in relation to also what is happening among male, and they're influenced also by them, and they collaborate in certain cases, especially for they need the support of men. And they also, I didn't mention that, but in general, if they are on social media and they have a career in the art, it's because they also have the support of their partner. So this is kind of also an important, and usually they are supportive, but they are almost invisible. Although the women, you never see any, it's very rare. Sometimes they have a photo of their husband, their family, but it's very rare that the husband is coming and interacting with them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Another question. This is from Yulia Maikshak, who asks, is it possible to determine how many % of Orthodox Jewish women have access to the internet, and how many of them actually use social media, for example, as percentages? Is there a way to?
So this is very, very difficult, indeed, because you can do a study, you can have sample of people and ask it, and then you have a number. You can create some numbers. I don't work with quantitative data on that level, and the question is also which community are you talking about? So for instance, in the more conservative So Satmar, Williamsburg, or the more Hasidic Yiddish environment, I guess this is much, so the consumption is lower. And also when they are on social media, but even you saw the case of Hani Rosengarten, who is coming from Skver. She doesn't live anymore in Skver, which is a very, very isolated, a very conservative community. So she's still Hasidic, but she's not in Skver anymore. So it's really hard to know the percentage, and also because a lot of them will not say that they have access to internet. So it depends, you know, I might have access to one person who is able to tell me, or a group of 5 people. But then, you know, 15 other won't tell me that they have, you know, internet and they are on social media. Also because sometimes they have fake profile, or they don't have their photo on it.
Thank you. And another question, this is from Zofia Bartewska, who asks, do you think the pandemic will somehow influence and open the Jewish community to internet and social media?
That's a very good question. So the first wave, there was a drastic increase in the sale of kosher entertainment downloaded. So yesterday, actually, I did an interview with a male, so this is a company who is really working with the distribution of kosher entertainment for music. And usually they really sell in stores, but the first wave during the pandemic, everything, so the stores was completely down and everything was online. A lot of also filmmakers told me that usually they have live performances, so it's over live performances on a large scale. So they started to have Zoom concerts, talk shows. So Dobie Baum created the Dobie Show, where she invited artists from around the world, from in the Orthodox world, to discuss their art and their journey in the art, their struggles, and also singing with them. So it was on her private Instagram platform, but also on Zoom. So, and the Zoom was completely open. Anybody could join. And I remember that sometimes there were thousands of, and it was the cap, you know, it's 1,000 and no more. And you had on the little camera, sometimes you see 3 girls. So there was a lot of people. And even here in Montreal, when I arrived in the summer, and I started, you know, I live in the neighborhood of Richmond, which is a very Hasidic, you know, environment. And we started to discuss kosher entertainment with, you know, Satmar, the more conservative. And they started to say, oh, no, I don't really know what is going on in the kosher. And the kids were telling Mom, you can't say, you know, during the pandemic, we started to watch all the, you know, because the father who has access to a smartphone or internet started to download from work and bringing back at home. So it influenced. Another example about this influence is that now I've seen, so about the Zoom, even if they were learning over the phone during the first wave of the pandemic, but it functioned because of Zoom. So the school had Zoom, and then people called the number from home to be able to connect. So that was the interesting irony. And something that is happening now with weddings and funerals, it's also on Zoom. But schools are really trying to push back on this. So they say the Zoom is only for, you know, if the Rebbe has to talk, it's for really religious authority. They don't want the Zoom to come in the home, because they know that, or they assume that if they started to really open, so the authority is trying to still control, but the people, in terms of their action and their practice, definitely there was an increase, and there is an increase. A lot of people are doing much more things and activities online, and even women. I mean, it's not a gender. The question about the ban is not for male or female, but this is just that the responsibility and the authority in a certain way is put on the shoulders of the women.
Kind of, and these will be the 2 last questions, because we're kind of running out of time, but kind of following up on the ways in which the current situation affects Orthodox Jewish life. Shakra Yobek Kursan Bekov, I apologize for the way I've mispronounced, asks, what do you think about kosher love? Do you think it remains same as before in Orthodox Jewish world? I mean, it remains the same or any changes occurred? Feminism can affect customs? This is the question.
So I don't know exactly what kosher love means here. I mean, I'm trying to read, or if the person can explain a little bit more. Is it thinking about arranged marriage here? Because I'm trying to think what it. I will respond through the. If it's about arranged marriage, so this is still so this is definitely not based on love. Yes,
Yeah.
okay. So no, this is not the way so depends which group you ask. So among Hasidim, like Satmar belts, Yiddish world, this is still the arranged marriage system. This is definitely not, they are not building the way, marriage function based on love, on this concept of love. So love is something that will come after. For the Litvish, I would say they date a little bit later. So they date much, several times. So this is a different way to think about marriage. But I will not articulate in terms of love. What has changed a lot is definitely sexuality within the marriage, etc. But this is not so love is something that you build on, that it's going to be developed. So, but this is not in terms of the arranged marriage. This is not based on this concept at all. This is something that you will build on. Yeah, I don't know if I respond.
And the last question, actually, another very timely one, I think, is from Julia Matrashek, who asks, Jewish people have been recently shown in a negative light in New York Times, BBC, Washington Post, in relation to not following the restrictions and organizing huge Jewish weddings along with huge fines. Is it a small group of people that ignore the pandemic or I assume pandemic guidelines, or is it is it a more general view?
So this is a very, could talk for hours on this question. There's so many things to impact. The thing that I would say, and this is, last week we had an issue also here in Montreal. In terms of following the restrictions, it has nothing. I mean, you can say that the idea of being anti-science is the background of the discussion. It depends who you. So there is, first, a lot of people talk to me about the fact that there's a lack of leadership. So the leadership within the community, there is not, as they used to say, smart leadership. So some of my friends and informants told me about this idea that the leadership is not really thinking ahead about the situation. The second very important element, especially in the United States, is the politicization of the pandemic with Trump in power. So they were very, very, so the community was known as conservative, but in terms of Trump, he embraced this idea that for a majority, for a lot of people, that they supported, so Trump supported Jewish Orthodox people. You had more Orthodox people at the White House, Chabad. So he released Rabushkin, who was also an Orthodox Chabad, but still he did a lot for Israel. So even if they are supposedly anti-Zionist Hasidim, but there are so many Jews in Israel. So the fact that he did that, that Trump did a lot of agreement with Israel, was a way to show support to the community. So, and when Trump, I think, especially since the summer and the fall, changed completely his narratives towards COVID. Also, so I think the first wave, a lot of people were much more cautious. So there was some isolated case, but there was a lot of tension within the community. But then in the summer and the fall, it was a completely different narrative, and it became extremely politicized. So they are aware. They have a lot of people dying in the community, and I don't think it's they are not denying, but they have a different, because it became politicized, so they have a different interpretation about it. So there is this important aspect. And the other one is it's a backlash between authority. They have their religious authority and this secular authority. And if Trump said, you know, this is not a big deal, you know, don't when he got it, don't take the virus, you know, take over your life. So it's not anymore, you know, at the margin, this discourse. It's the president, where 66 million people voted for. So I don't remember exactly the numbers. So this is not anymore at the margin. So it depends where you ask. But yeah, the negative light. There is, you know, like everywhere, there's a lot of the reality, you know, some I think last week or 2 weeks ago there was a wedding with 3,000 people or more, and some of my friends said, yeah, we went. It's, people act like if it's not here anymore, and we know that we'll have to pay, so people will pay. It's not a big deal. Yeah, I don't know what I can talk more, but I think maybe I will. But just to say that this is not only a religious question, this is a political question. And what is interesting for the pandemic is that it highlights the tension and the multiple discourses that you can have also within the community, and the fact that there are a crisis of authority that goes, yes, the internet, but that goes completely beyond it, that they have a crisis of leadership as well.
Thank you, and thank you for like tackling such a huge question. I think it is very interesting to see it in context, especially the way that it gets reported on kind of rarely provides this kind of background information about the various tensions. Okay, we've taken up quite a lot of your time, and I just wanted to thank you so much for coming to speak at the American Studies Center. I hope that there will be a future in which you can actually visit our institution physically and maybe give a talk on your future projects. Thank you, everyone. And by the way, thank you to our students today. This week is the last week of their classes before the exam session starts. So I do appreciate that people made time to join us for this unique opportunity. We're hoping that this video will be uploaded to YouTube. So if anyone came in late and would like to kind of look up the beginning of your presentation in time, it will appear, the recording will appear. So thank you so much, Jessica, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Marta. Thank you, Agnieszka, and thank you also, Carolina, for the invitation, and thank you to the American Studies Center. And have a wonderful week and stay safe, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.